we have an interview here from Eurogamer came in talking about the future of Zelda. So Eurogamer interviewed series producer Eiji Aonuma. If you ever watch any of the Nintendo Directs, he is the nice old man that introduces the game. He's like the creative director on these games. And some interesting things came from this interview that I want to talk about. So this interview came from Ed Nightingale, and he writes, as Zelda series producer, Eiji Aonuma has stated that the Breath of the Wild style of gameplay continued in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a new kind of format for the future of the series. And in an interview with Game Informer, this was in a Game Informer interview. Aonuma was asked if the open world design would be the foundation for the next several games, just as Ocarina of Time previously established the 3D format. Aonuma agreed Ocarina did create a format, but it was ultimately restrictive for the designers, while Breath of the Wild offered a new type of play. IG said, with Ocarina of Time, I think it's correct to say that it did kind of create a format for a number of titles in the franchise that came after it. But in some ways, that was a little bit restricting for us. While we always aimed to give the player freedoms of certain kinds, there were certain things that format didn't really afford in giving people freedom. Of course, the series continued to evolve after Ocarina of Time, but I think it's also fair to say now that we've arrived at Breath of the Wild and the new type of more open play and freedom that it affords. Yeah, I think it's correct to say that it has created a new kind of format for the series to proceed from, end quote. Aonuma also commented on puzzle design and the variety of solutions available to players, noting that he thinks it's okay to cheat. Yes. Quote, when you think about people, cheating is fun, he laughs. They like it. Finding the shortcut is enjoyable. People will look for an easy way to do something if they can avoid struggling. We want to make sure that is something that stayed in the game. He said, fuck yeah, Aonuma.
Hell yeah.
And it seems that the style of puzzle solving is here to stay. They finished the interview by saying, when thinking of games in the past that we've worked on, where there was a puzzle to solve and only one answer, that's kind of the past way of developing games. Now, I'm happy that we've arrived at this method where we're giving people lots of options and there are many answers to a single problem, and all of them can potentially be correct. I feel happy that we've arrived at this type of development style, he said. So all of that to say, I have a few questions. Obviously, this game is going to be a huge success after Breath of the Wild. We were just talking about the sales, all that thing, blah, blah, blah. Do we think, based on what he was just saying, that this is kind of the future of Zelda? Do you think we're still going to get smaller Zelda games moving forward? Like things like Link's Awakening, things like, the smaller ones like that, 2D over the top, or the more like medium-sized 3D Majora's, Wind Waker's, Ocarina, those kinds of games, Skyward Sword? Or do you think it's just this open world sandbox moving forward, and we'll kind of fill that need with remakes and re-releases and things like that? Where's your head on that? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think the logical answer from a Nintendo perspective is to use games that have already been built and then turn them into something that's modernized with different style. I think we'll get things like, I think we'll get an HD port of Twilight Princess. I think we'll get an HD port of at least Wind Waker. I don't foresee us probably getting a remake of Majora's Mask or Skyward Sword just because of the way that those games work. I don't think it makes sense for them to do that, right? Because like if they're going to remake that game, that's a 3D open world Zelda game that really kind of not really open world, but like it's a 3D Zelda game that really ushered in this era. And while I would love to see them make like a really cool version of Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time that's like aesthetically more pleasing and feels a little bit better to play with some quality of life improvements, I think the problem if you do that and remake a game like that, I think the issue you run into is that people are going to look at that and be like, well, I just wanted more of the Breath of the Wild style or Tears of the Kingdom style. And I think and then you start to date your games, right? So I think it makes more sense to go with more like a Link's Awakening style where you're still doing the top down. You get your traditional Zelda style game that there's been so many of. So if you do like Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages, or you do something like Minish Cap or Four Swords, something like that, and you make it like Link's Awakening, then people expect this because they're like, oh, this is a completely different style of game. But if you take something like, Majora's Mask, and you're like, hey, this is look at how beautiful this looks now, and it looks the same graphic style as Breath of the Wild. You're like, nah, 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 nah. So I do think we'll probably get like remakes of some of the older games in style. It might not look like the claymation style of Link's Awakening, which by the way is just fucking adorable,
So good. So
so
cute.
fucking good. That like I do think that there's a world in which we will get certain types of those games that are gonna be top down, the asymmetrical style, old school style, but I don't think we're gonna be getting complete remakes of these older games, just because of the way that this type of game that Breath of the Wild is or Tears of the Kingdom is very different, and
It's so different.
that sense of freedom, I think a lot of gamers will be turned off going back to some of those older ones if they look just like it, but you're just limited in capacity.
Yeah. I wonder though, because I mean, I guess in a way, this concern, they already proved me wrong once. They could probably prove me wrong again, but it's like, how do you follow Tears of the Kingdom with another game like this? I said that about Breath of the Wild, and look at me now. Like I got egg on my face because they fucking nailed it. But I kind of wonder if like the way forward is to like kind of jump in between them. Like I almost think of like um a future where they do a Tears of the Kingdom type game, and then they kind of they reel it in with a smaller style, whether that is the Link's Awakening, or if they were to do like just a smaller, more traditional 3D Zelda game, um, and then go back and like kind of that like either or, where maybe like the Assassin's Creed style, where you have like one team working on this, one team working on that. They're a little different, and they kind of have their own spin. Because I don't know, I as much as I was just gushing on this, I was like, man, this is maybe the greatest game ever made. I still want those like smaller Zelda games too.
Oh, for
So,
sure.
so like, I don't know. I hope that this is just him saying, we now have three types of Zelda games we're going to make: Tears of the Kingdom, Link's Awakening, and Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Ocarina, all of those kind of like medium sized open, again, not open world, but that like 3D adventure type game. I
So
hope there's all of those exist in the future.
here's the thing for me. If I'm looking at this from the perspective of like I'm a Nintendo exec, if I do that option where I give you three, I'm looking closest at the middle tier. So if like Tears of the Kingdom is at the top at 1, 2 is something like Twilight Princess, and 3 is something like Link's Awakening, like I'm more focused on the middle tier, because you got to think there's bandwidth that's being spent there. There's money involved making this.
Sure.
Whereas like you can probably cut some corners, you can probably do some things a little bit different. You can do it with a smaller team to make a smaller experience like Link's Awakening or something like Minish Cap or something like that.
Yeah.
I think my problem is you're still dumping a good portion of your budget to try to hit that middle tier, that number 2 spot. And so if it doesn't perform well, and if you have people that are like, no, 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 I want more of the other, then like I'm ending it right there. And the thing
Sure.
is do you take a risk? And that's I think the other issue is like how risky is Nintendo going to be when it comes to this? Because if I'm the one who's putting my money towards it and I'm putting my investors' money towards this, I'm not going to have a middle tier. I'm going to have a smaller linear style experience. It's old school. And then I'm going to have my top tier AAA gangbuster, just
Yeah.
big boy. And I'm not, and this is coming from the person who loves AA games.
Oh,
Who
for
loves
sure.
shit games, right?
It's interesting though, because like when you think about the audience and the kind of location of looking in the past of Zelda games, your big ones and your small ones. The small ones were always the handhelds. Link's Awakening originally on the Game Boy Color or Advance, one of the Game Boys. Minish Cap Game Boy Advance. Like that. Usually, these kind of top-down, smaller experiences are the handheld equivalent, spin-off, whatever you want to call it.
They don't have a handheld anymore.
Right, it's all the same. So like that's the thing that it makes it kind of puts us in this unknown territory. Is normally they had two systems. Now everything is one. So maybe it is just that all forward on the Tears of the Kingdom likes moving forward, and we're just gonna re-release the older games and you can get your fix that way. I don't know. What you got?
Here's I think the one part of the equation we're leaving out. We don't know what the Switch 2 looks like.
Sure. That's true.
So here's the thing. Nintendo could have two consoles on the horizon.
The Switch 2 is 2 consoles.
Okay, maybe not
No,
necessary. Yeah. So we have like Nintendo releases something that's going to be more akin to your Xbox, your PlayStation that is locked in, right? Because they're like,
I wouldn't be surprised if they went that route.
we can't continue to produce, yeah, we can't continue to produce big scale games on limited hardware. So they could say like the Switch 2 is your handheld. That's going to be like your 3DS. This is going to be your handheld that you're going to keep with you. You're going to walk around. It's going to be a little bit stronger than what's currently out there. It's going to have a really nice screen, XYZ. But then you're also going to have the option of like a big boy. And then you could, potentially dock your Switch in and still play it on the TV next to it, but you're going to have one that's going to be locked in. So like, you're going to have some of these smaller experiences in a handheld, and you're going to have your bigger experiences, because at a certain point you have to start to question like, how big can they make these games and still be able to do like that, like this? Because like you were saying, when you were playing God of War on the Steam Deck, that was like, it was melting by the time you got done.
Yeah.
So like, that's the juxtapose, is that like the more power that goes into it, you need more cooling efficiencies. So,
and battery, like the battery was awful. It was like 1 hour before it died.
So like, and so there's that, and it's like, okay, so where is Nintendo's head in terms of hardware? And I think that depending on what that looks like, that could potentially alter their course on how they want to do things. They could have a two, like that 2-tier game, that number 2 slot that's like a Twilight Princess, that can function on both. But if you want to play Tears of the Kingdom 2, you have to have a locked-in console, because we cannot like find or technologically put this on something like that without it literally melting in your hands.
This is interesting. This is a very interesting thing that I've not considered. What if the next generation of Nintendo goes back to a 2-console system of, you got your TV console, you got your handheld console? Because you're right. Like, if they want to have console parity to PlayStation and Xbox, Switch 2 that is a dockable and handheld console, I don't think can do it, or it'll only do it for 2 years, maybe. Because we already know that a mid-generation upgrade is on the horizon for PlayStation. So it's safe to assume one might already be on the way for Xbox as well. There haven't been as many rumors, but if PlayStation is doing
more,
it,
in Xbox is more, Microsoft's more tight-lipped about that.
That's
kind of
true.
Sony just doesn't give a shit.
And they already have 2 SKUs, and the Xbox Series X is already technically more powerful than the PS5. They just don't have the fucking games to play on it. So yeah, I don't know. This is interesting.
I think the thing is like, where this might diverge, the paths might diverge in Nintendo's favor, is that Nintendo goes, we don't need console parity. We're not in this space anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we can't keep up making things like they haven't been in the console parity conversation since
the GameCube.
I mean, I guess
that was. I mean, it was more. Well,
they lost the console
equal then, but I mean,
way
PlayStation
more
2 and
PlayStation
2 outsold it by like 6 times.
Way more equal in terms of console parity, I think, with the GameCube than like the N64 to PS1. Because the PS1 just was graphically much more advanced than the N64.
For sure.
And so I think the GameCube is probably the closest to it. But I think at this point, like, they've had multiple generations now where they're just like, nah, fuck it. Like, we make games that are specific for this, and we don't really give a shit because our games are great.
And it's been working. Like, I mean, the Switch is, I think, the 3rd best-selling console of all time. The Wii is pretty high up too.
And then who knows? I mean, there might be some technology out there that hasn't been tapped into, or at least we're not aware of, because the Steam Deck is now like a year old.
Mm-hmm.
That like, hey, there is like, we might not be able to get Steam Deck level quality games. You might not be able to play God of War on here, but we're pretty damn close to it. And this thing has some sort of new technology that does not run nearly as hot.
Yeah.
And as we get more advanced, there's going to be more stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Interesting. I'm interested to see where we go from here, because I want to know what their future looks like. folks, that's our show. We have a little bit of a calendar update. I do want to quickly, I forgot to earlier when we were talking about Tears of the Kingdom, read some audience impressions. And then I also want to flip the question to you. If you're watching later, if you're listening later, write in, let us know what you think of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom if you were playing it. But here's a few quick little things from the audience. Terry, you might still be in the chat. Terry wrote in, holy crap, I'm enjoying the heck out of this game. This is what I wanted Breath of the Wild to feel like. Nick said, excited to feel like I'm back on an epic quest. Haven't felt this since Elden Ring. Mechanics, he said. And then Mondo, aka Chunklet the Mongu, friend of the show, says, incredible. Not sure how they made a masterpiece better, but here we are. Essentially, we're all aligned. This game fucking rules. Let us know if you agree, or let us know if you think we're crazy and you just like playing fucking Halo, you nerd. Here's our little game update. Coming to Game Pass today, FIFA 23. If you like sports games, go play that on your Xbox for free with Game Pass. And then on the 30th, Chicory, A Colorful Tale. I played a little bit of this on Switch and I liked it.
It's fun. Yeah.
There's a lot more games coming to Game Pass, but those are the ones that I thought were interesting and I think our audience will find interesting. So if you want to know more, fucking Google it. Also on PlayStation Plus, Extra and Premium, as of today, you can get Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart on PS5. You can get Dishonored 2 and Dishonored Death the Outsider. You can also get the Tomb Raider reboot trilogy, The Evil Within 2, and Lake, which was like a 1980s, not made in the 80s, set in the 80s, cozy, like mail delivering sim that I always wanted to play that I never played. So that is definitely, I will be playing that. So yeah, some cool games out there. If you don't necessarily want to drop the money on Zelda, or you don't have a Switch, you just have a PlayStation or an Xbox, maybe those are some games you want to check out. Cayman.
Yes, sir.
Always a fun conversation. I want to end our show before we start telling people where they can find us with the last comment we got in the chat from Connie. I just want Donkey Kong 64 on the Switch. I don't disagree.
Hell yeah.
Let's bring it. And
bring back Linky Kong.
Bring him and bring it in a yellow cartridge, please.
Yes.
Cayman, where can they find you? Where can they find Save Trash Cinema, the podcast?
You can find me at the Dumpster Boy on Twitter, and you can find Save Trash Cinema at Save Trash Cinema on all socials.
Boom shakalaka. You can find me at Patrick Schwag, or you can find the pod on Twitter at Spot Games Pod, or on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at Spotlight Games Pod. You can also email us mail at spotlightgames.net. Tuesday nights on Twitch, Thursdays on YouTube and podcast services. Taking a break, starting the week after next. Fucking play some video games, have some fun. I love you. Goodbye.